This poem just blew my head off. I couldn't understand how it exists. It seemed like it must be impossible, and I'll get to that later on in the video. But what really affected me was that it was so inventive and playful, while at the same time being so emotionally deep. Suffer as in allow, list as in want, listless as in transcending desire, or not rising to greet it. To list is to lean dangerously to one side. Have you forgotten? Spent as in exhausted. So what this poem's doing is using words that have multiple definitions, and it's using, in each case, the less common definition to make the poem work, while still retaining the implications, the associations of the main definition. So when we read that first line, suffer as in allow, we are being given the definition of suffering as when we suffer something to happen. Some of these definitions may be so uncommon that you might not even have heard them, and that's fine. We can go through each one by one, and you can pick them up. There were a few that I remember when I first read this poem more than 10 years ago. I had the same experience. There were certain words that I didn't know and I had to look up. Or, the poem itself tells me the definition of the word, but I had to look up, is that really a definition? That can't be the right. I think list I didn't know at the time. But let's start with suffer. You suffer something. I'm suffering. I will suffer it. You're a parent and you're going to allow this thing to happen. You're going to put up with it. Compared to the main definition that we usually use, which is we're suffering as in we're in pain. We are suffering terribly from something bad happening. So right from the get-go, we see that this poem, Spent, obviously the title is giving us a hint at this. It's spent, well, yet again, it's two definitions. Spent as in spent our money, and spent as in we are spent, we have no energy left. Suffer as in allow. So we're brought to this automatically into this negative feeling, this feeling of things are going bad. But we're also, if we reread this line, suffer as in allow, we are also experiencing the idea that we are allowing ourselves to suffer. Suffer is an allow. We're not just suffering, we're allowing ourselves to suffer. Or our suffering is caused by allowing these things to happen to us. And that's a whole stanza in and of itself. I think Rae Armantrout is telling us this is important. She's devoted a whole stanza just to these four words. So let's think about them very carefully. Suffer as in allow. Each word in this whole poem weighs on us as we read it. She's written it very specifically with a very specific formatting in order to encourage us to do that, and it's very important because it increases that feeling of being spent, of being exhausted. List as in want. Okay, so let's start with the main meaning. What do we do when we list? We list things. We list things out. When we say list as in want, we may start to think about a list as in a Christmas list. These are the presents we want for Christmas from Santa. But we've got to remember that she's giving us alternate definitions. Does list mean want? Yes, it does. In the olden days, in the Shakespearean times, we had a word that was list. There's a famous poem by Thomas Wyatt which starts, "Whoso list to hunt," which means those who want to hunt, those who want to go and have some fun. List as in want. So she's just giving us these two lines that are also two stanzas. All she's done is give us literal definitions, but they're so powerful because these definitions, when you think about them, when she puts them into these stanzas by themselves and forces us to think about them and experience them and bring those two definitions together, it means so much, because suffering is allowing. We're allowing ourselves to suffer. And listing as in want. Making a list of things for Santa is wanting things. Listless as in transcending desire, or not rising to greet it. So in this case, the secondary meaning, she's actually giving us two different options what the definition is. Listless. Our first definition of listless is to be exhausted. That's the main one. When we say I'm feeling listless, it means it basically means I'm spent, which is what she used later on, but it means I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I can't do anything. But what if listless meant transcending desire? This draws us back to the previous stanza, list as in want. So we had those two definitions of list, to make a list of things you want, and also to list as in just purely to want something. So what if we don't want something? What if we're not writing a list? That's when we're listless. We don't have a list of things we want. So are we transcending desire, like the Buddha? Have we become enlightened? That would be great. Or not rising to greet it. And isn't that interesting how those two things, one is the ultimate goal of a large portion of the world, to become enlightened, to not have any desires, but at the same time, we can't see into their mind. Maybe this particular person who has no desires has actually just given up on themselves, on being able to achieve those desires, because they failed to achieve them for so long. And that's not a good state to be in. We want to get rid of desires, but if the only reason we're not desiring things is because we've given up on ourselves, that's bad. And she does, I think it's clear with the basic overall gist of the poem. Obviously, we're going to put the weight on that second definition there, not rising to greet it. We haven't transcended desire. We're not rising to greet it. To list is to lean dangerously to one side. And this is the definition being given, is the definition of list on a boat. If a boat is listing, it's in a lot of danger of tipping over, and the captain has to align it back up so that it doesn't fall over. But then that's not the main definition. So we bring it back to the main definition, which is writing that list for Santa. To list is to lean dangerously to one side. So when we have all these desires, when we have these things we want, we're tipping ourselves over with all this stuff. We're leaning dangerously to one side because we're so obsessed with this particular thing. We want this car, we want this television. And it's a wonderful little, it's a wonderful idea. And it's amazing that she managed to get so many definitions of lists out of this poem. Have you forgotten? And this is where she calls straight back to the reader. She says, have you forgotten? Like, all of these things are the truth. To list, to want, to have these desires. It's going to tip you over. It's going to cause you more stress. It's going to make you more exhausted, more listless. And even if you get to the point where you don't have desires, if that's from being so overwhelmed from having had the desires and not being able to get them, then that's even worse. Spent as in exhausted. And then we get this spent. We're supposed to think of the two definitions as throughout the rest of the poem. Spent, not just as in... the definition she's giving is spent as in exhausted, tired. And then we automatically have to go back to the main meaning of spent, which is I spent my money. So we're talking about consumerism here. We're talking about all these desires. We're buying here, we're buying there. We have these lists of things we want. And we spend our money, and then what do we get from it? Exhaustion. Exhaustion. We're spent, as in exhausted. It's such an amazing poem, just from a purely emotional perspective. The way she's put it together, the heaviness of all the words and all the lines. And then for me, personally, as someone who is deeply interested in formal playfulness and the specifics of different languages. It's amazing to me that she's managed to find this sort of gimmick of providing a bunch of definitions of words that have alternate definitions, words that mean multiple things, and brought it together in such a perfect combination to describe an actual feeling. The fact that she's found these specific words with these specific alternate definitions, and they all work so well, that listless really does mean that these different things, that list means these different things that come together, and then that spent, that she found spent as well, she found suffer, that she was managed to find all these things in the English language that come together to produce this poem, which obviously can't be translated into any other language, because in any other language, suffer won't mean allow. Maybe there's one language where that does mean, but in that language, list won't mean want, listless won't mean transcending desire. The only language this poem can appear in is English. If someone wants to translate it into another language, they're going to have to find a set of equivalent words, of words that are in a similar way mean two different things, and then manage to fit them all together in a similarly perfect manner, which seems unlikely. I mean, it seems unlikely that this poem could ever exist in the first place. It's almost like it's a God-given poem, or it's given by the English language to us. It's just a poem that exists intrinsic to the language, that if Rae Armantrout didn't exist, maybe someone else would have eventually found it. Maybe they would have eventually noticed, oh wait, these words, if I make a poem where I'm using the secondary definitions of words and then I put them together, well, what words have these secondary definitions? Oh, okay. Maybe they would come up with almost the same poem if they were talented enough. I mean, Rae Armantrout's a genius, so, it's not going to be done by anyone, but it's not going to be done by 1,000 monkeys, but it could be done eventually, because there are multiple geniuses in the world, and there is only one English language, and I think only one poem that could be created with this form. I don't think we have other definitions, other words with double definitions where you could create such a perfectly made poem. Suffer, as in allow. List, as in want. Listless, as in transcending desire, or not rising to greet it. To list is to lean dangerously to one side. Have you forgotten? Spent, as in exhausted.